Hey everyone, it's Types and Phantasmal Flames recently released in the Pokemon TCG, which is a new expansion that is honestly relatively small slash weak. It's not like completely horrendous, I guess, but there's not that many powerful cards. There are a couple of powerful trainers that are pretty versatile, I guess. Dawn searching for basic stage 1, stage 2 as a supporter. It is a cool card. It's actually a card I don't even know if I played yet so far, but it is definitely good and playable in a few different decks and quite strong in those decks there. Then there's also the Stadium card Battle Cage. I'll actually be talking about this a little bit today, but it's a stadium that prevents damage cards being placed on benched Pokemon by effects of attacks and abilities from your opponent's Pokemon. This is useful for countering some of the strongest Pokemon in the format right now, but it's obviously not really a deck build around here either. And outside of that, Mega Lopunny EX, probably the best new Pokemon, unless I'm forgetting something. There are some other Megas that are pretty decent. Mega Dansey EX is fine enough in Gardevoir, I guess. Though it's not like game-changing. Then Mega Charizard X EX. I just want to say, this video isn't about this card, but I've seen people playing it. I mean, it's not a bad card, but I've seen people like really committing to it, playing like Oricorio EX and which Oricorio EX is like okay, but I would not play it. And every time I played against it, it's felt pretty. I mean, it's not felt horrendous, but it's also not felt any better than regular Charizard EX, which is a really high bar there. It's a really powerful card. But anyways, I don't think this card's super good. But if you disagree, tell me down below in the comment section as to why. But overall, there's a handful of decent cards that are interesting as well. But the card that caught my eye the most, there are actually two cards. The one is Blowtorch. I'll talk a little bit about Blowtorch in this video. They're not too much, but it's a card that you discard a basic fire from your hand to discard a tool or special energy from one of your opponent's Pokemon in play or a stadium in play, which is a fun card to remove certain of your opponent's resources. Then there's also the new Rotom EX. Rotom EX was not a card that originally captured my attention too much. What it says with its ability Multi-Adapter, each Pokemon that has Rotom in its name can have up to 2 Pokemon tool cards attached. If the ability goes away, then you discard Pokemon tools until they have only one on them. And then you also can do 130 for Lightning Colorless, and you discard all energy from this Pokemon. This attack, I'll just say, is like super bad. 2 energy 130 is not very good, and then you also lose all the energy, which is like really, really bad. Which does matter a little in the deck that I'll cover here, the Rotom deck, theoretically, but again, it is pretty bad, but did want to mention it there. But ultimately, Rotom EX is really interesting, obviously working with the different Rotom cards. If you're not familiar, then there is a Rotom, or there are a handful of Rotoms in Standard. Let me just pull up all of them here. So apparently there's 11 different Rotoms, and there's a set of 4 Rotoms of different types, a grass, a fire, a water, and a lightning here, and they all have the attack gadget show for 2 colors, which does 30 damage for each tool attached to all your Pokemon. This is pretty nice to allow you to go ahead and, just do without the new Rotom EX. You can have up to 6 tools on your board, assuming you don't have Area 0 Underdepths, which will then give you 180, there we go, 180 damage. But with the new Rotom EX, you could be doing up to 360, which is more than you're really needing to do a lot of the time. So it is pretty powerful there. There's some other interesting Rotoms as well, and I'll quickly show off the first list I made. I covered this list on my channel. Check it out if you haven't. Also, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss me play potentially a different variation of this deck. I'm not sure if I will. Also, I'm going to say the reason I'm not playing the list here today is because it's super complicated / almost stressful. Not this list, though. This one is kind of complicated, but it focuses, of course, around Rotom EX and different tool cards. Also, do a Blowtorch. Blowtorch was a card I was, as I said, very excited to play with. To be honest, I've not played it. Well, I've included it in decks, but I've not actually played it. Either because I haven't had it, I haven't had the energy, or I haven't had things to discard. Most of the time, it's because I haven't had things to discard or particularly valuable things to discard. Getting rid of a special energy can be really powerful. Being completely honest, the main deck playing special energy right now that I'm worried about is Dragapult, but I haven't actually seen that much Dragapult, which I'm happy to say. But also in terms of testing this deck, there's some stuff to be desired in that regard. But ultimately, I have the Rotoms that I mentioned earlier. I have the Mow Rotom, 2 copies of that, as well as the Lightning Rotom. I thought these were the best types to be hit. Oh, no. Oh, no, sorry, the Fire Rotom. Yeah, not the Lightning Rotom. The Fire Rotom, and these are like decent for hitting weakness. Mow Rotom hitting weakness on Charizard EX, Grimmsnarl EX, and a few other things is really nice. Heat Rotom hitting weakness on like Gholdengo EX is nice. I'll get to the other ones in a second. Long story short, they end up going into the deck there. But then I have some other Rotoms as well that are really fun control cards. You have this Mow Rotom, which gets rid of tools and special energy. This also has redundancy with Blowtorch. Again, long story short, they both end up getting cut. But that's kind of fun for some controlly stuff. This Rotom can disrupt your opponent's hand and has a usable attack. I guess the second one there as well. Then this Rotom here has the option to recover an item from your discard to your hand for a colorless, which is pretty cool. I also have Ethan Sudowoodo as, in my opinion, one of the best control Pokemon in the format right now. I don't play too much control. So if I want to make a full control Rotom deck, I'll definitely need to try out some like regular Pidgeot control a bit more than I have. But ultimately, that's about all there is to the Pokemon, and also Fezandipiti EX. The list, the final list I've ended up on, I'll show. It's a little weird. Well, you'll see in a second. But then, in terms of trainers, the supporter lineups relatively straightforward here. And same thing with the item lineup. Obviously, the item lineup might be a little thinner than you're looking for, specifically because you have to play a lot of tools, right? So we have 4 Counter Gains, 3 XP shares, 3 Bravery Charms, 2 Gravity Gemstones, 2 Brave Bangles, an Air Balloon, and a TM Turbo Energize. Also Town Store to get those, Treasure Tracker, and Arven, allowing you to have these explosive turns where you get a ton of tools in play and get big knockouts. And yeah, this deck it's not super straightforward, but it's relatively straightforward to get the energies on your board. You save them with the XP share, use Counter Gain to fill in the gaps. Counter Gain is a colorless, or yeah, it reduces your attack costs by 1 colorless if you're down on prizes there, so that's useful. EXP share, as I said, it maintains the energy on your board, moves it from your active if it's knocked out by damage to one of your bench Pokemon. We'll also mention in one game I played, my opponent was taking knockouts through the use of Poison, using Serena EX and Brute Bonnet, and they set up well, I guess. I mean, they set up, and that was really bad, because EXP share doesn't trigger, Fezandipiti EX doesn't trigger, it was just really bad. I also kind of bricked, but ultimately, yeah, I mean, you definitely have some interesting things you can do here. I also have Gravity Gemstone. Gravity Gemstone is a fun little controller card. I didn't really end up using it too much, so it ended up getting cut. And also TM Turbo Energize. This is kind of cool for getting energy on your board. You'll see why I got cut in just a moment here, but also it doesn't stay on. Someone made a comment on one of my videos. I've talked about this comment a lot. It's like a cool comment that I should play the TMs with TM Machine, and then also Jamming Tower, which seems like really funny, but ultimately not really good there, because I mean, your tool deck turning off all your tools, which seems bad, but it does seem funny. I might try it, but ultimately I found that the controlling aspects of the list were more of a play that you'd make in a bad situation, which you don't really want to be in, and then I usually end up losing the games, like just trying to claw my way back, but not really getting there. On the other hand, you are able to burst these big knockouts here, and have these really explosive plays out of nowhere with Treasure Tracker, but also you're not always using Treasure Tracker. Treasure Tracker is an ace spec that searches for 5 tools, puts them into your hand. Obviously, I mean, it's a lot of damage. It's 150 plus damage. Brave Bangle is the plus there. And I mean, you'll presumably always have room on your board to attach the tools, unless you're maxed out in terms of like you're hitting that 300 plus damage, in which case you're getting the one shot anyway. So it's definitely cool here with Treasure Tracker, but Treasure Tracker, I made 2 lists that are very similar. I'm just going to show the one without Treasure Tracker. Treasure Tracker leads to, as I said, some explosive plays, but I feel like you can often hit those explosive plays without Treasure Tracker as well. But I'll show the final list here now, which I've been teasing for the whole video. And this list, I want to quickly mention, I do have 2 copies of Fezandipiti EX. I was just trying it out. There's not really a specific reason that's in this deck over like any other random deck, other than I guess it's a single prize deck. So then you presumably will get more use out of Fezandipiti EX, but the general logic is it's like the best card in the game, potentially. In my opinion, I think it's definitely the best Pokemon in the game. I don't think there's really too much argument there. They're ultimately the cards it gets compared to are very different from it. But it's like super good. So I was like, why not play 2 copies of it? It allows you to spend less ball search on Fezandipiti EX, then you can get other things, and allows you to be okay if it's prized. If it gets knocked out, you can Night Stretcher for it or Nest Ball for it still. So gives you a little bit more versatility there. It's felt fine, but if you wanted to not do that, that's fine too there. But ultimately, Fezandipiti EX, the double Fezandipiti thing is funny. Also, you do need Pokemon in play. You can see the Rotom line. I have the 4 Rotoms, 1 of each type. pretty much, there's not too much to overthink there. I do play one Buddy-Buddy Poffin. Some of them are searchable, some of them aren't. Buddy-Buddy Poffin's okay. The reason I added it, I also have an Ultra Ball here. Ultra Ball is just a worse Nest Ball. I mean, technically I can thin with it in ways I can't with Nest Ball, but for the most part it's a worse Nest Ball. But the reason it's in this list is because the fact that it's a card that allows you to get more Pokemon. You're looking for a little more Pokemon search, but Buddy-Buddy Poffin is the same thing there. They're both okay. Turn 1 going second, you want to go second generally with this deck, though. It doesn't matter too much necessarily. But anyways, with Arven, you can turn 1 go second, grab Buddy-Buddy Poffin for Budew, and then another, like one of your Rotoms there, which is a little bit better than just Nest Balling for Budew. But anyways, Budew is really nice because you want to buy time in the early game because this deck is a comeback-focused deck. Which I realized when you look at the tools that get energy on your board, because you need 2 energies. You're getting tools on board isn't like super hard. I mean, getting like 12 or like 11 or 10 is it's hard, right? It's not impossible or anything like that, but it's not something you're getting out of nowhere, especially without Treasure Tracker. But through the course of a handful of turns, by playing like Arven or Iono or Lillies every turn, you'll be able to get there as well. It's not like absurd there. And then you might need to reach a little bit more for those supporters. But for the most part, you're able to use your supporter lineup to get your tools into play, just like general tools. And then you can use Fezandipiti EX as well. Fezandipiti EX is like super important as like the only draw Pokemon in the deck. Also mentioned I chucked in a copy of Lucky Helmet. I don't know if this card's good. I originally had 2 as well at one point. This allows you to draw 2 if you're hidden to, which is more draw. And your opponent, they might have ways around it. Like there is Tool Scrapper. I have not actually been Tool Scrappered when I've been playing this deck. I've been hit by other things that are worse than Tool Scrapper, but I have not been hit by Tool Scrapper. If your opponent plays it, it's kind of annoying. It kind of depends, but you should be resilient enough. As I said, you're a pretty explosive deck, so you go from relatively little to getting a lot on board. But anyways, you want to buy time with Budew. And generally, Rotom EX, of course, allows you to get 2 tools on your Rotoms. However, if it gets knocked out, or its ability gets shut off by Klefki, which that's happened a few times, which is bad, kind of. It's just a little weird. But ultimately, then you can lose tools. So you don't want to commit 2 tools to a Pokemon that often. Sometimes you kind of need to, but ultimately, Rotom EX is like an enabler, but people will often target it down in my experience, which is what it is. It's certainly not like that bad. I'd probably rather them target down the Rotom EX than the Fezandipiti EX. People certainly targeted that one down as well. The Rotom EX is something that, when it gets knocked out or its ability gets shut off, then you can lose a lot of tools, and that can be bad, so you want to play around that and just not attach a bunch of extra tools. I'd say maybe 2 extra tools, like 2 tools on 2 Rotoms is okay. Losing 2 tools is, like, it is what it is, right? And that's going to happen. I mean, if you're knocked out with a Pokemon with 2 tools, you lost 2 anyway, so you need to be a little careful. The list plays 15 tools here. You're looking for, again, potentially 12 to get like a big one shot, or probably 11 realistically if it doesn't EX in play. But that's most of your tools, right? So you need to be a little bit careful there. I could see increase of the tool count. I've kind of wanted to do that, but it's felt okay. I'll mention jamming. Jamming Tower is bad, right? Jamming Tower turns off all your tools, so you need Stadium Bumps. I play 4. I've definitely had issues hitting it when I need it. I haven't seen that much Jamming Tower either with this deck. But it is kind of bad. One of the main decks that does play it as well is Dragapult, which is why I do a Battle Cage. I have 2 copies of it. As I said, haven't really played that matchup. Battle Cage was useful one game against Marnies. It made the game really slow on live as well. I'll mention that here. But Battle Cage is definitely an interesting inclusion that could be really powerful in some situations. Obviously, just a dead card in others. So I'm not super sure on the count of that. I play this deck enough to be confident that the build is pretty decent. But again, some of those like matchup specific things I do need to still figure out here, which I'd actually, I'd recommend leaving to you to mess around with it. Obviously, everyone has their own tastes in like counting cards and stuff. But ultimately, that stuff is pretty understandable. What's not as understandable is the 3 energies. Originally, my list had, or as I showed, it had 6. This one now just has 3 and a copy of Earthen Vessel. And this is very low. This is because, as I said, this deck is more comeback focused, like really comeback focused. You're essentially never pushing an advantage, which means that all your games are super close, assuming you're in the game. If you're like obliterated, then it's not close, presumably. That doesn't happen too much. You have Fezandipiti EX to rely on pretty heavily. Presumably your opponent's not taking like lots of prizes every turn. So if your opponent gets off to a bit of a head start, you should hopefully be okay there. But ultimately, the deck is very the games are very close. It relies on taking 2 prizes 3 turns in a row to win. But you really want to attack with Counter Gain. Counter Gain is really the card that this card is amazing. Saying it's pretty much an energy that doesn't take your energy attachment. It does take up a tool slot on a Pokemon. Which again, you do have 2 of on your Rotoms, but if you have EXP share, that's going to fulfill a similar role theoretically. If you have a bunch of EXP shares on your Pokemon, you're not actually going to have energy to fill them all up, though. Because if you're using Counter Gain, you're just going to have, if you have 2 Counter Gains, you'll have no energies. If you have 1 Counter Gain, you'd have 1 energy there. So that's something that's a little weird. And then Brave Bangle is also good. I mentioned that you only have you have a limited number of tools within the deck to actually get these big knockouts, but Brave Bangle is essentially 2 tools. It increases the damage you do by 30 to an EX. And yeah, I mean, that's specifically on a non-EX, but that's definitely kind of useful there. And you just need to be a little bit careful with your energies, though, to make sure that you get them on your Pokemon. One game I lost because my opponent played really well, but I also made a mistake. I had EXP share on my Rotom EX. The reason I had it there was because I just needed a tool in play. And I was like, oh, I could use it as like a pivot or whatever. But then I ended up getting the energy stuck on Rotom EX and wasn't able to actually attack with my Rotom, the attacking one, whichever one it was. I don't remember which type. But yeah, you just need to be a little bit careful. Let the energies hit your discard pile sometimes. You can Night Stretch them back. You have 4 Night Stretchers. So you have decent access to energy in the late game. It's not too bad. Night Stretcher might be getting back a specific Rotom for a weakness as well. Sometimes you can take big one-shots with say, I mean, any of the Rotoms hitting for a weakness, any of them can. If your opponent's playing Cerulet, you want to Wash Rotom. If they're playing Charizard, you want to Mow Rotom. If they're playing, if they have like Pidgeot EX, you can target that down with regular Rotom, which is really useful as well. You want to go after that Pidgeot EX, or Fezandipiti EX or whatever, because if your opponent is able to boss down your 2 prizes every turn, that can be bad. You need to be behind really most of the time with to be able to use Counter Gain, but if you're behind, then your opponent's also kind of controlling the tempo of the game, so it gets really, as I said, tight and scary there. But you do need to be taking these 2 prize knockouts, and taking for a weakness is good, and going after their engine is really good as well. That's why I have Prime Catcher here. Prime Catcher is also a switch. I've found myself in situations where I've kind of gotten trapped, but that's more of like me being nervous about it. But ultimately, it's really useful as a gusting effect in the late game, where maybe you both have 2 prizes remaining and you need a Prime Catcher, or your opponent can catch on to what you're doing where you're trying to fall behind on prizes. They go for some different route and you have Prime Catcher to hopefully figure things out. Same thing with Boss's Orders as well. Prime Catcher is good. Boss's Orders is also pretty good. I play 2 copies of Pokégear. Ultimately, Pokégear is a card that I don't really enjoy because it's kind of random. You get a supporter from the top 7 of your deck, which may or may not be there, right? It may or may not be what you want, but ultimately it's a decent card. I cut Professor's Research from the list. Professor's Research is a card that is a good draw supporter, right? But it does discard you cards. Discarding tools it's like not good. You really need tools. I've had games where I've run out of tools in my entire deck to get the knockouts that I need, that I've been like kind of talking about in this video. But yeah, I mean, the tools are definitely something that you need to be careful of. You can generally commit them, but they're not always going to be in the place you want. Also, Bravery Charm. Bravery Charm's kind of meh, to be honest. There have been situations where it is useful, but there, again, more maybe me being scared of something like Dusknoir or Dragapult or whatever. Those are scary. You could add another Air Balloon. I've kind of wanted that. A Brave Bangle, EXP share, Lucky Helmet. Any of the tools that don't have maxed out counts, there are reasons to add them to the deck. There are other tools as well that are kind of cool here. Also, the deck doesn't really have the control elements at all, except for the early game disruption with Budew, where you just want to be putting yourself in a position where your board state is pretty decent and able to transition into that big burst knockout situation that you know want to find yourself in. Yeah, this deck has a really weird feel to it. In some sense, it's kind of similar to almost like Dragapult, where you're setting up and then going for these big burst plays. But Dragapult also is going for these big burst plays to wipe out your opponent's board. And I mean, it's just really strong. The Rotoms, I mean, the damage can be really high, but you're not wiping your opponent's board unless they overcommit to one big attacker, which you could do. But again, even if they are like if they overcommit, you can't necessarily punish them too much because again, if you get even or ahead on prizes, you very well may not be able to attack because you might not have the energies. Earthen Vessel does get you 2, which allows you to attack. You could get like Iono to not even have the energies. So again, you are looking more to make these big plays in the late game. But it's a really cool deck to try out. I definitely would recommend trying it. It takes some games to get used to, but it's definitely decent. I played this deck enough to have confidence that it has some legitimate potential. It's a really fun deck, but as I said, definitely try it out. It's kind of stressful. I don't know if I'm going to play it on the channel. I played another Rotom deck. Might play like a true Rotom control deck as well. Tell me down below in the comments if you want to see that. But as I said, I really recommend you trying it out. It's really cool. But I hope you enjoyed. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that good stuff. And as Osmond said, see you in the next video.